was a huge part of what brought me back to being the head coach at Fort Hays eventually was Dr. Hammond.
Did you play a lot of doubleheaders, men's and women then men? I know I was with,
Yep.
I did Washburn basketball
Yep.
for a while, and there was a lot of that.
Yep, we certainly did, and again, as back in the day when I was playing, it was the CSIC and we were making, travel to where we were playing Fridays and Saturdays, traveling on the same bus with the men's team, and we were playing doubleheaders and playing back-to-back nights.
Well, tell us about the culmination of this, the 1991 NAIA Championship Tournament. Tell us how that road to the title went.
Well, obviously, as you brought up Washburn, in that time of that late 80s, early 90s, Washburn and Fort Hays, Emporia, we were always kind of the teams that you had to go through to get to the national tournament. And the year of 1991 was no different. We had to defeat Washburn in what was at the time the District 10 championship. Then we had to go on to beat an Oklahoma team in a by-district to even get to Jackson, Tennessee to the national tournament. And by the time we had gotten there, we felt like we had battled such difficult games that had prepared us. And in the early rounds of that national tournament, we were able to defeat our opponents pretty handedly because I think the level of competition that we were playing here within the state of Kansas in women's basketball at that time was such a top level. We ultimately ended up meeting Southwest Oklahoma in the national championship game, and their slogan for the year, their team theme was "We're going for the thumb finger on the other hand," because they had won 5 national championships. So they were going for their 6th national championship. And we told them that, it's not going to be your national championship ring because it's going to be ours on our finger. And it was a very close game throughout the entire game. It was a very low scoring, which was what we wanted. We wanted defensive games, low scoring games. But you really had some standout play. Our starting point guard, Christy Leeper, she hadn't taken any shots the entire game, and we're in the last 2 minutes of the ball game, and she puts 2 free throws in to put us up. Patrice Faulkner hits a 3 that puts us up by 5. And we were just in a space and a place where we knew we had to get defensive stops because we knew we had enough points. And I think we ended up winning by, I believe, 3. If I can recall back to that point, I think it was like 57-54, something like that in the final tick of the clock. And again, it was the first women's basketball national championship at Fort Hays. At that time, it was also the first women's basketball national championship in the state of Kansas. So we got brought to the House and the Senate floors, where we were recognized by the governor and by the state of Kansas, because it was really a huge accomplishment and felt like we had really broke through to putting women's basketball on the map in the state of Kansas.
So the college career ends, and obviously there's not the kind of options that an All-American and national tournament MVP might have in other situations. What was the adjustment like to moving on with the rest of your life?
Well, strangely enough, my college coach had connections to an agent in Chicago, and I actually considered to play professionally for a while. They were starting to have professional players go overseas and play. Right. And so that agent flew into Hays, Kansas, met with me and Coach Klein. And I actually had a contract to play in Denmark as a professional player. And that was kind of the beginning of what was going to be eventually the ABA for women and the WNBA, which it eventually grew into many years later. But ultimately, my coach offered me to be the graduate assistant, stay on with the basketball program. Of course, my sister was 2 years younger. She was still on the team equally as well at Fort Hays. And so it would give me an opportunity to get coaching experience, be able to stay being a part of her life and watching her play. And then I completed my master's degree in athletic administration and then was offered the head coaching job at Bethany College. And that started my coaching career.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Hey, Kansas City, Joe Spiker, Easton Roofing, back for another beautiful springtime in Kansas City. We are proud to announce our renewed partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Kansas City. Starting in 2024, a portion of every job sold will be donated to a cause close to my heart. I was a big, and I encourage you to volunteer. And if you hire us for service on your residential or commercial roof, you'll know that a portion of the profits will go to a great cause. So call us at 913-257-5426. Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
We're here at the 23rd Street Brewery with Matt Llewellyn. And Matt, you've got a great menu. You fine-tuned it a little bit. Great beers. There's always something to be had to put a smile on your face at the 23rd Street Brewery.
Oh, you bet. And Brian Haney would always say, come have the Haney turkey stack. Bill Self would say, come have the Bill Self pasta. I would say, come have the Bill Self pasta. It's great. Great mac and cheese, buffalo mac and cheese. And we've got a ton of other menu items that you're sure to love. We've got a great brewer who's brewing great beer. And if you like craft beer, our guy's the way to go. And we're making great drinks, too. There's a great new distillery in the state of Kansas called Llewellyn Distillery. My brother's doing that. He makes some great whiskey and vodka and rum, and we're doing all kinds of great drinks with those beverages.
Always fun to be had at the 23rd Street Brewery, 23rd and Castle. Come on by anytime and have a good time. If you'd like to join these and other fine sponsors and market your business to Kansas City's #1 variety podcast, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to working with you.
Our guest is Annette Wiles. She'll be inducted into the Kansas Sports Hall of Fame in October after a remarkable career, both playing and coaching, and we're just starting the coaching part here. And you mentioned that you had two different types of coaches in high school that you both you admired and respected, and they were completely different. Did you take something from both? Did you create your own style as you were starting out at Bethany at only, 24, 25 years old?
Yeah, I was 23. I was 23 years old when I became the head coach at Bethany. And of course, I took the defense from Coach Klein. We ran a very intense man-to-man pressure defensive system. So I took the defense from my college coach, and then I sat for hours and hours at the kitchen table of my high school coach and Coach Weatherman, picking out the things I was going to implement and things I believed that fit the personnel. As a college coach, I think each of your seasons are always adapted to the team and the players that you have and the players that you can successfully get the ball to on offense. But I basically used the offense from my high school coach for the most part. We ran a lot of KU fast break and a lot of KU secondary break stuff, a lot of motion, man offense, a lot of zone isolation plays. And for me, I really found that I didn't think I really started coming into my own as a coach till I was probably moving on to being the head coach back at Fort Hays. I think, as coaches, you stick with what works, and you keep riding the opportunity to be successful because it's worked for coaches before you. And so again, I was blessed to have very successful seasons at Bethany. I was blessed to coach very strong academic students. We won 2 academic national championships at Bethany with our team GPA, and we were able to go to 4 national tournaments. And then it was an honor and privilege to come back to Fort Hays State and be the head coach at Fort Hays for 8 seasons.
You mentioned that you didn't feel like you were coming into your own. Obviously, the previous was pretty good, 164 and 52 at Bethany. How did the return to Fort Hays State come about?
Well, it always felt so different because as I was moving through the administrative buildings as the head coach, they were asking me if I was back again as a student. And so it felt surreal that I was still seeing the same people that I had seen for 6 years in my undergraduate and my graduate degree at Fort Hays. To know that those were still a lot of the same faces, and now I was coming back as the head coach. So it felt familiar, but yet it felt extremely different because, the pressure was extremely intense. I wanted Fort Hays to be back in that national tournament scene. They had not made the NCAA Division II national tournament. And when we were able to go to the first NCAA Division II national tournament, it was a huge accomplishment for our women's program and starting to build the tradition that has existed in the program from moving from NAIA to NCAA Division II.
So you were there for 8 seasons as well. What would you consider a couple of the high points at Fort Hays?
Well, I think getting to that first national tournament, I think also getting to that second national tournament and advancing. Obviously, I think the thing that makes me extremely proud is we had a 100% graduation rate under my direction as a head coach. And it's something that we cared about students and athletes and the whole person. And I'm just proud of the teams and the successes. I've talked to a lot of coaches that coached against me after I've left coaching, and they're like, we always knew it was going to be just a dogfight every time we played your teams. And I took pride that our teams worked extremely hard.
So you concluded your time in Fort Hays in 2008 and moved to Minnesota Duluth, obviously leaving, something behind, precious memories of playing and coaching at your alma mater. How did that come about?
Yeah, it was more of a point in life. I had never lived outside of Kansas and thought to myself, am I ever going to leave Kansas, or am I always just going to be in Kansas my whole life? A mutual colleague had made a call to me and said, this would be a fantastic opportunity for you to make a move where there's Division I hockey and the athletic program virtually operates like a Division I athletic program. And to live somewhere other than Kansas, it felt like it was kind of taking a leap or an adventure or growing in my development as a person. It was a big move. I have to say that surviving 7 winters in the Northland is a huge accomplishment for a Kansas kid. But it was certainly a welcome time to come back home to Kansas equally as well.
So 7 years there, you had great success, wins and losses, but then at the end of your tenure, there was a lot of controversy regarding more than one coach at Minnesota Duluth. What was that situation all about?
Well, I think a big part of it is as time and people and circumstances evolve, you start seeing the importance of social justice, and you start seeing the importance of taking a stand of social equity. And that really became an indication that there was things that were happening that were out of balance with what norms of society should be in the 21st century. And I think it became an opportunity to bring clarity to some of those inequities and some of those issues of diversity. And it basically, in my opinion, was a growth of the athletic department at UMD and the University of Minnesota. And I think it was also to bring attention to we need to be doing better in how we're treating women's sports and women's coaches.
I think you referred to it as being forced to resign. What was that situation like? Why did you feel like you went to that length? And then, of course, there'd be a court case as well.
Well, I think in part it was time for a space and a place where it was no longer healthy in the workplace environment, and there was not any comfort in a space that you felt like you were being supported or being uplifted to be successful. And it just came to that space and place where there was clearly a divide that was not going to get repaired, and it forced that decision to be made.
Then it's time to return home, and that would be the end of directly coaching. How difficult was that, and how welcoming was it to come back to your familiar home in Kansas?
Well, it was certainly great to come back home, to be back closer to my siblings, and be back closer to my parents as they were aging, and they're entering the years of being in their 80s now. And as a part of that, it felt very exciting to be back around the things and the people that were familiar. But yet at the same point, I felt like there was always a part of my career in the early goings of working to climb and build in a profession of college sports. And then an opportunity came along to start living more of a life of service and giving back, and an opportunity to work in Topeka Public Schools arose, and becoming the athletic director at Topeka High, and now the district athletic director and director of Hummer Sports Park in Topeka Public Schools.
What was it like as transitioning from being a coach and directly coaching players, et cetera, to overseeing an entire athletic department like at Topeka High?
Well, I think that was always my plan. I think in part that's why I